this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. You know, that maze of things that happens to us 24/7 that we think, hey, I've hit the wall, I can't go any further. But really, that's not true. If you want to go further, you have to take a step back, look around, and put your energy into taking the next step. My guest today is Matthew LaBosco. Did I say it right?
You sure did.
Oh, wow. As my listeners know, I'm terrible with names.
You got this.
And Matthew is a vitality expert. And what I'm finding interesting today is that so many of us find this special quality inside of us. And when we find it, we label it. And one of my specialties is working with coaches, understanding what people need when they're looking for a coach. So I've become a coach advocate for those people who say, you know, I saw Matthew on your program and this is what I'm looking for. And if it's a good match, even if it's not, sometimes I'll even say, contact them, find out for yourself. Because I think coaching is so vital in today's society. So Matthew, I'm assuming when you were a little boy, maybe you wanted to be a fireman, race car driver. Did you think you were going to be a vitality expert?
Not even for a millisecond.
So what drew you to this occupation and creating a following?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably similar to many people's journeys. You know, I think I was faced with my own personal challenges and, obstacles and pain, etc. And, it all started with just trying to figure out how to get out of my own pain, right? I think a lot of that's kind of how it starts for so many people.
You're right.
And for me, I was a three-sport athlete as a kid. My whole identity was wrapped in being an athlete for sure, and performing, etc. And I was quickly breaking down physically. Had a lot of injuries. Elbow problems was the first thing I had to overcome as a baseball player, and that ended my baseball career. And then I had ankle and knee problems and played soccer, and I also played basketball. And I got to this point right around my senior year in high school. It's like, man, I don't think your knee and ankle can hold up for both of these sports. So you're going to have to pick one. And because my basketball team, we just won the States, I picked basketball over soccer, even though I was probably a better soccer player than I was a basketball player. But anyway, and then my senior year playing basketball, I got injured again and couldn't complete my senior year, and finished about a month. Had to stop about a month before the season ended, which is kind of brutal because that's when all the tournaments and playoffs and all the fun stuff happens. And I was also 40 points shy of scoring 1,000 points in high school, so it was kind of a brutal way to end, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I was just left with this idea of, why am I so broken? Like, what is wrong with me, right? Like, what the hell? Like, I don't understand. And the crazy part about it is I had direct access to the medical model. I mean, my father was a doctor, my mom was a nurse practitioner. And so I had access to the answers, quote unquote, but it just didn't seem to have any answers for me, right? And so I really became obsessive, would definitely be the word, to find answers to questions that it seemed like nobody really had. And I took a deep dive into studying the physical body, because it was what was breaking down. So I went on this massively intensive exploration of, I'll just call it, I need to get stronger, because I didn't know what else to do. It's like, well, clearly I'm weak, so I guess I need to get stronger. And so I studied strength training and like all of the things. I got more certifications that I can remember, studied for any expert, guru, whatever. Like, I took their courses and I implemented everything, and I got big and I got really strong. You would have looked at me when I was in my early 20s and be like, wow, that guy, he's fitness, like he's the picture of fitness. And there was a moment for me, Karen, where I was working out in New York City, actually, with a buddy of mine, and we were going for a personal record in the amount of weight to press over your head, right? Again, to just keep getting stronger, quote unquote. And I personal record pressed this insane amount of weight over my head from a seated position. And I'm not kidding you, I racked the weight, and I literally thought to myself, oh my God, I think I've overcome my brokenness. Like, I've arrived. Like, I just pressed 300 pounds over my head. Like, that's not an easy feat to do. And I took 3 steps away from that bench and my whole right arm seized up and I couldn't move it.
Oh, yeah. No.
It was basically like dangling from my upper arm. It was not great. And at this point, I had my orthopedic surgeon's number on speed dial because I already had a few surgeries. He already did surgery on my elbow once. And so I was convinced I destroyed my elbow. Like, clearly it's exploded. I need surgery like now. And so I contacted him and went to see him, and the classic, visit. You're sitting in that little room and you're waiting for them to come in so they can tell you what's wrong with you and so that they can fix you, And he came in, did his assessment, looked at the x-rays, and I'm literally waiting for him to say surgery tomorrow. And what he said to me, Karen, changed my life because it set me on the path, like in a very direct way, to where I am today, to answer the question you asked me like an hour ago. But he said to me, yeah, man, I don't see anything wrong with your elbow. I was like, excuse me? Like, are you talking to somebody else? Because I can't even hold this right now. If you asked me to sign my name, I couldn't. So what are you talking about? Right? And it just dawned on me, and for whatever reason, this is now 20 years ago, it dawned on me. I was like, wow, they don't have all the answers. Huh. Like, my dad's a doctor, and dads know everything. If you're a kid, like, dad knows everything. Right. And dad's a doctor, dad knows everything. Transitive property is like, okay. But it just hit me. It's like, whoa, they don't have all the answers. Like, oh my God, like, I can't believe it. Like, basically their machines can't tell them what's wrong with me is basically what it boils down to. And I was like, all right. And then I had this next thought, which is, wow, it's kind of unfair for me to expect them to have all the answers. This is pretty complicated stuff. And, I'm gonna really start to figure this out myself. And he did offer me another surgery. He's like, well, we can go in there and find out what's going on. I'm like, I think I'm good. Thank you though. And I literally just started to dive into, and what I really did is I started to challenge every fundamental belief about what health was. Like, well, what is health even? What's the definition of health? Like, I don't even, like, what are we trying to, if health is the goal, how are we defining that? And so when you look up the definition of health, it's the absence of illness and disease. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's the Mecca. That's the place we're trying to get to, is to not be sick. Like, that's the pinnacle place. Like, yeah, no, I will hope, please tell me there's something more than that, please. And so that's where I came up. When I look up vitality, and it's a very different definition. It's exuberant physical strength and mental vigor. It's the ability to live a meaningful and purposeful existence, the power to live and grow. It's like, yeah, sign me up for that. I want vitality. I don't want health anymore. And so through the process of challenging all the accepted truths of, why are we rehabilitating someone's back that way? Like, why are we doing that? Like, why are we have people on their back doing these dead bug exercises? Why are we doing bridges? Why are we doing all these external and internal rotation exercises to help people with their shoulder? Why was everyone's core weak? And why are we doing, like, I just became the most annoying person in every class that I ever took. And just asked why. And I just didn't settle for answers that weren't answers. Well, the studies show and blah, blah, blah. It's like, don't tell me studies, man. For every study you tell me blueberries, cure cancer, I'll show you 5 that say they cause cancer. So I don't want no studies. I want to know practical application. I want principles, and I want to really get to the bottom of this. And so it wasn't easy.
I'm sure it wasn't.
And so my wife and I, we've moved 18 times. since we've been married. We've now been married 20 years. We're in our 21st year of marriage, believe it or not. Amazing. 2 beautiful children. But 18 times looking for people that can answer some of these questions. And I got to tell you, I've been beyond blessed with some of the most incredible teachers and mentors, my wife and I both, that are willing to have these deeper conversations with us. And we did that deep dive in fitness first. Then we took a deep dive in systemic wellness, which is also about nutrition. And why are salads healthy again? Like, why is telling everybody to eat salads? Like, I don't get it. Why is no calorie, no fat, no sugar, no salt food? Why is that good again? Like, what's the purpose of eating? To lose weight or to make our blood work look good? Like, what's the purpose? Oh, it's to make energy and recover. Oh, okay. So can we talk about that instead? Because I don't really care about what I need to eat to lose weight, because that's not the purpose of eating. I mean, we just went on and on and on, deep dives here. And then I spent 10 years with a personal development company. And really, because I wanted to understand mindset and frameworks and, all these things with emotion, like we need to accept emotions and let them go. And if you feel this, you breathe through it. I'm like, why are we doing that? Wait, so what's the purpose of emotions? They're just as an inconvenience. We need to get rid of them. Like, what are we doing here? And wait, and we want to pursue happiness? Well, does that make sense? Like, why are we doing that? Because is that the goal? Is the goal to just be happy? Who came up with that? And again, like, super annoying, just never accepted anything and wanted people to actually be able to explain themselves. And what I found through the journey was, again, health is not what I want to create anymore. Because the model, if there was one thing I would tell you that I've discovered on this 20+ year journey, is the health model and the health paradigm and all the accepted truths. It all has us actually work against ourselves. We're working against our biology, working against our physiology. We're working against like some basic fundamental evolutionary biology. Like, we're fighting against it. And the other thing I realized was the whole system really creates dependency on itself.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway. as you're talking about this, I get this picture of maybe what you were like as a 2-year-old asking all the whys. And for some reason, we are convinced by probably age 5 or 6, don't ask why. Okay, we're just going to tell you, and this is what you're going to learn. This is how you're going to learn in this school. And if you go to a different school, it may be different. And then you start, well, wait a second, that worked for me. This is not. And that's why I started this podcast, because we all basically want the same thing at the end of the road.
100%.
But we're all going to put a different label on it.
Mm-hmm.
But for some of us, we're going to blame either our parents, our teachers, the neighbor next door for getting me down the wrong path. Or we're going to say, well, I'm here because of them. And the reality of it is, no, you're not. You're here because this is how you walk the path. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine, and your wife has to be the most generous person to have moved 18 times in 20 years. She never got to settle down.
No. And thank God she was on a similar path, right? And so I wouldn't say she was just following me around. Like, we were on this path together, and we wanted the same thing. Like you said, like we definitely wanted something. We both struggled with our health. I mean, again, if you took a picture of us in our 20s, we look like the epitome of health. But, inside it was a disaster area. And the crazy part about it is we followed everything to a T. We did everything we were told. We ate, quote unquote, perfectly. I mean, and it just created these results that were pretty blatantly terrible. I mean, she was told she couldn't have kids. I write about her story in the book, like all the fertility problems she had, autoimmune stuff. I mean, it was not great. It was not great. And so we both were very passionate and driven to get answers. So, but she is an angel. There's no question about it. To tolerate, I could probably tell that I'm pretty intense, and can latch onto something and just become obsessed about it. And so she's a perfect partner. And I think I'm a pretty good partner for her because I'm not afraid to get after it. And she kind of, yin to the yang, right?
Yes, I totally get it. So during this journey, where was your first stop and why was it your first stop?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first stop that actually made an impact, because there was a lot of wrong stops. But I will tell you that, I mean, at first I was on the path to going to med school and being an orthopedic surgeon. Like that was where I wanted to go because that seemed like, well, I mean, I'm getting all these surgeries. I feel like I need to figure this out. And so I did an orthopedic internship with an orthopedic surgeon, watched him do surgery for a whole summer. Super cool experience. But I realized very quickly, actually, after that internship, I'm like, yeah, this isn't what I want to be doing. And so I thought physical therapy school was this. So I was going to go to PT school. A month out from PT school, I bailed. I'm like, this isn't it either. And then I started to try to do my own thing and it wasn't going well. And you just struggle. And I'm just like, I'm trying to create something that doesn't exist. I guess I'll go to chiropractic school because I don't know what else to do. So we literally moved to this place. It's Port Orange, Florida, which is where there's a Palmer Chiropractic. We moved there so Matt can go to chiropractic school. And then I got in touch with a mentor of mine that used to work for the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and somebody that I just resonated with. And we would always geek out and talk about, man, we need a new profession. And, there's just nowhere to learn what we want to learn. Like we would just have these conversations. And I got reconnected with him and I got on the phone with him and he's asked me what I'm doing. And he's like, I'm like, man, I'm going to chiropractic school. I don't know what else to do. And he goes, you don't want to be a chiropractor. I go, oh my God, man, I know I don't, but I don't know what else to do. Please tell me where to go. I don't know. I don't know. And so then he said to me, he's like, well, I'm learning from this gentleman and we're learning about chain reaction biomechanics. It's a completely new way to look at the body and how everything we've learned in regular school about anatomy, just why it doesn't apply. It's actually cadaveric anatomy. We're basically rehabilitating and training people like they're dead people because everything that we're basing these programs on was off cadaveric anatomy, which is the studying of a dead person. But anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole right now, but he's like, yeah, man, it's totally different. I'm learning directly from him. His name is Gary Gray, the Gray Institute. And he's like, I'm actually leaving National Academy of Sports Medicine. I'm going to start my own thing. He's like, why don't you come out to California? We'll learn together and we'll open up our own place. Okay, so just picture this, Karen. We just moved to Port Orange. My parents are finally like, oh my God, Matt's finally just going to go to chiropractic school. We don't have to worry about him anymore. He's finally going to get settled down. Instead, Matt calls his parents and says, so not doing the chiropractor thing. I'm going to move to California and study with this guy who has a small office in the basement of this fitness studio, and we're going to create a new profession. Great idea, Matt. Yeah, no, that's not how that conversation. So that was my first mentor, man. And it was definitely a pretty big move. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. It was very challenging. I mean, my wife was honestly one of the probably the reason why we were eating, because she always got a great job. She was a spa director, and she designed many spas for plastic. I mean, she could find a job, and a decent paying job, while Matt was finding himself, right? I mean, I worked odds and end jobs. I had some of the craziest side jobs just to make a couple bucks. But moving to California, I was living out of my car, just trying to spend as much time with him as possible, knowing that my wife was going to be moving out here in 2 months. Like, I think she gave me like a little 4 to 6 months runway to kind of get things going and also to finish up the job she was doing. So I'm like, all right, I got 2 months to get my act together here. And I remember my first paycheck. Thank God she wasn't out yet, because I just started training at this little studio in Old Town Pasadena. And I didn't have any clients. Nobody knew me. I didn't, you know what I mean? And I got my first paycheck. I'm sitting in this house of this woman who clearly liked cats more than people. And I don't even know why she rented her room out, because it was clear she didn't want me there. But anyway, I'm sitting on the bed. I'm looking at my first paycheck. It's like $45.67. And I go, holy Moses, what have I done? Like, and I just remember in that moment, I'm like, all right, well, there is no other option right now but to make this work. Like, there's no other option. And so
Sure.
I went all in and studied with this guy, learned as much as I could. And 9 months later, we opened up our own clinic together. And that was my first mentor, man. And he taught me how to think. I will forever be grateful to Mr. Lenny Parasino. So yes, yeah, that was where it started.
And I love your story for a number of reasons. Number one, you came from a background where I'm sure you were comfortable growing up in life.
You could say
Your parents were, somewhat prominent in the community. And so when you grow up like that, in the back of your mind, it's, and that's going to be me someday because it's comfortable and they were good parents and I liked my house. But then you start taking classes or trying things on for size and you go, that doesn't fit right. And boy, am I going to be happy when I have kids and they're my age now wanting to do something and they're going to say, so dad, how do you like your career? And you go, I've hated every minute of it. That's difficult because your kids don't want you to hate your life and your parents don't. But I can also see when you told your parents that you were packing up to go to chiropractic school, it was like, oh my God, what now?
exactly.
And then, oh, I'm going to California, I'm giving it up. And it's like, why are you giving up? Because I'm sure that was not how they brought you up.
Yeah.
But I can also say that in the last 20, 25 years, if you have been mindful, you started to realize that the career I thought I wanted, the house I thought I wanted, the family that I wanted, you know what? It looks different now. And if I allow myself to follow this new path with some detours in between, I'm going to find myself. And I think that is really what I saw in your story. We can't be afraid, and like you said, you picked up some odd jobs because you had to put money in your pocket.
Exactly.
But you also knew those odd jobs were just that. It was just temporary. So when you opened up your clinic, you said you didn't really know anybody. So how did you get clients? What did you do?
I learned very quickly how to market and put myself out there. And funny story about the first, I'd hit the streets, right? And you got to hustle, right? And my Lenny had a name, so he was able to bring people in, but I had to create a name for myself. I was learning under him. And a funny story about what not to do. I remember going to these running stores and I said, oh, maybe I can create a win-win with these places. And, if they spend more than this much money on a pair of shoes, they get a free running evaluation, from a movement specialist, right? And so it's like, all right, that's kind of a cool idea. And one running store took me up on it. And I remember getting my first bite. Someone actually called me. Someone actually came in. And I was so excited. A little too excited, because I literally tried to tell this woman everything I knew in like a half hour. And the result of that was this woman could not get out of there fast enough. Okay. It vomited everything all over her. It's funny to think about it now, to the point where she left without reschedule. She had free things. Like, she could have done this like couple sessions with me, and she didn't schedule. She's like, I'll call you. I'm like, okay, And I remember calling her, Karen, and hey, and she goes, you know what? Please don't call me again. I was like, woo, okay, well, first you got to learn what not to do before you can figure out what to do. So I got to say, I wasn't afraid to fail, clearly, if I was ready to just pick up and move across the country. But I just was in high action, and I would say I was a quick adapter, right? And so when something didn't work, I made an adjustment and kept moving forward, and learned relatively quickly. Some of the hacks to learning is find people doing what you want to do and learn from them. I mean, that was probably my ultimate life hack, and that's why I would travel to learn from people like my mentors. But I did similar things with marketing, and then really the thing that I'd say really accelerated and got me very busy in a relatively short period of time was results. Once you get people results, the referrals come pouring in.
Right.
So once you get those first 5 to 10 people, and you actually have something of value, and you actually can deliver on what you say and get people to the goals they're trying to get to, it all happens from there. So my focus was always on getting people results. That was my bias. I didn't like the how do you convince someone to buy something from you? Like I hated that. I've been to those seminar or those
Yeah.
classes, and I never felt right. I just didn't want to do the manipulating thing. I'm like, listen, I think I can help you. I know I can get you here in this many sessions, and if I can't, I'll give you your money back. Like that was kind of where it started. I had one gentleman come in, and and I could tell he was so frustrated. I actually write about this guy in my book. It's one of the case studies in my book. He came in, had some kind of non-specific back pain, saw everybody. And I mean everybody. And I could tell he was so fed up and so frustrated with the whole process. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that because
Sure.
And all these people that he's been to that said they could help him, right? And he came in, and I think his wife forced him to come see me. Like he didn't want to be there. I could see that. His arms were crossed, and I could tell he was in pain, and I could tell he was so tired of all this. And he looks at me dead in the eye, Karen, and he goes, "What the hell are you going to say and do for me that everyone else hasn't already tried?" And I was like, "Man, I get it. I hear you, man." And I said, "I don't know if I can help you, but let me go through my thing here and see if I can." And luckily enough, when I went through the assessment with him, I'm like, man, there is a monster, I call it a big rock here, and I'm not sure why this hasn't been addressed. And I even said to him, it was something about his hip. He's like, yeah, they've already done that, and that doesn't help. I'm like, well, if they have treated this, why is it still here? And this, again, I go into all the reasons in the book. I'm not going to get into it here, but what I said to him was, I said, listen, because I really believed I could help him, but I'm also clear that people already told him that. I said, listen, I'm not going to tell you I can help you, but here's what I'll do. I'll work with you for free. And when you feel like it's worth paying me, you can start to pay me. And so two or three sessions in, he's, I don't know, probably 50% better and able to do more stuff with less pain. And I didn't say anything. And on the third session, he comes in. It was quite funny. He takes out his credit card and he throws it on my desk and goes, "I think it's time for you to get paid." I said, "Great." So that's how I got busy, was getting people results,
Well,
and I wasn't afraid to put my money where my mouth was.
Well, what I am finding, and it's not just in the medical field, it's all across the board. When you have this interest and you go to somebody, you may not know if they're an expert or not, but you go to somebody and you say, "This is what I want." The first thing they do is, "Oh, well, if I wanted that, this is how I would get it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was faced with most of my adult life. My last full-time job was with corporate America. I was an advisor at a private college. Loved what I did because I was working with people and I would listen to what they wanted. And I can't tell you how many I had to turn away because we didn't have the program for them, which got me into trouble all the time. But I kept saying, there's somebody else out there who's going to walk in, who's going to need our program. And, management didn't understand that. If Susie comes in and says she wants to be a nurse, why are you telling her that maybe it's not her profession? Well, she doesn't like late hours. She doesn't like being around sick people, and she cannot stand the sight of blood. Okay, she's not going to make a very good nurse. I'm not even sure she can get through the course. And they'd look at me, well, that's her decision. And we'd be like, no, if we're sincere human beings, we're going to listen.
Yeah.
And I know I was taken down some wrong roads. And when you talk about injuries, my son has been nursing, we don't know exactly what it is, but some injury in his knee. Now he's been doing this for probably 15 years. Most of the time he's absolutely fine. But every doctor he's gone to, they basically have said, just go run a little bit more. Just go stretch a little bit more. And he's finally in a very secure, good job. And he calls me the other day, says, I'm looking for a doctor. I'm not going to tell him how bad my knee hurts. I want him to manipulate it, because at the end of the day, he can't bend it. Something's wrong. And it could be just exercise or movement. Mm-hmm. But when people look at these x-rays, and I should say doctors, radiologists, they look at the x-ray, they only want to see what they're trained to see. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you probably make a better coach and mentor than being in today's medicine world.
Yeah, and again, I think you make a lot of great points there, Karen. And I think where the medical model is really good, when there is acute cause and effect. Like, hey, I always used to say, if you're out going for a run and somebody jumps out from behind a bush and takes a bat to your knee, go to the orthopedic surgeon, because your structure just got exploded by a bat. Okay. But if you're going out for a run and your knee starts to bother you a little bit, and then it starts bothering you a little bit more, and then all of a sudden it hurts, that's a movement deficiency. And you have to look at the mechanics of running, and you have to understand the mechanics of running, and you also have to understand the mechanics of the human body, which is very different than what they teach kinesiology in school and physical therapy. Because of what I said, it's cadaveric anatomy. So most people with knee pain, as an example, are told their quads are weak, their hamstrings are tight. And you know what I mean? Like they're looking at the knee and they're strengthening the muscles in the knee. And that's the problem. There's this, just like what I fell into. Well, immediately, oh, your knee is weak. That's the problem. It's like that is so like hitting the bullseye on the wrong target. I can't even tell you when you actually understand how the system works. The knee, as an example, just go here because it might help your son a little bit. We call the knee a slave joint. Okay. And the reason why we call it a slave joint is because it literally is slave to what the hip and the foot tell it to do. Okay. And the other thing that's fascinating about the knee is it's a hinge joint, like I said. So a hinge joint is terrible at rotating. Horrible rotator, because it does really good bending, flexing.
Right.
There's a reason why it lives in between a ball and socket joint hip and a incredibly dynamic foot and ankle that both have incredible capacity to rotate. But they need to be rotating and on the same page. So because imagine if the guy up top is turning right and the guy downstairs is turning left. The guy in the middle is like, oh my God, who am I supposed to follow here? That's an ACL injury at the end of the day, right? And so when a knee is getting beat up, especially with repetitive motion, et cetera, it's because the knee's being asked to do something it wasn't designed to do. I think of the knee like a 25 horsepower engine. And then you got the 500 horsepower engine of the hip, and the foot is actually a switch to the hip. And so when those two guys are working together, you take the unnecessary forces away from the knee. And so the knee's fine. The knee hurting is the tip of the iceberg. It's like it's sending a signal. Like, I'm being asked to do something I'm not designed to do. I'm not weak because you're actually asking a 50 horsepower engine to put out 100 horsepower. So is the 50 horsepower engine weak? No. wasn't designed to do that, right? But what's crazy about the human body, and I'm sure it's the case with your son, is the body can take a 50 horsepower engine and kind of get 75 horsepower out of it for a while.
Right.
Not sustainable, and has the side effects to it, which is wear and tear.
Well, to everyone who's out there, I think this conversation has it hits so close to home, not just for my son, but for what I've seen with myself and other people that you go to a doctor, and I'm not putting all doctors down, because I've had one great GP who is
100%.
He's retiring this year, and all I want to do is cry, because he looks at me from head to toe. And not only does he look at me physically, but the questions that he will ask me. He never says, Karen, you have to go on a diet. What he'll say is, you're not sleeping very well, and you're telling me that you're up basically 16 hours a day. So we need to find out how you can nurture yourself, both emotionally and physically.
Wow. Yeah. Why is he retiring? We need more doctors.
And I love him for that, because it reminds me, okay, yeah, I've been trying to diet for the last month, and I'm feeling really lousy. And I've lost a half a pound a week. Is it worth that half pound? And so when he says it to me, it's like, okay, yeah, I need to take a step back. No, I don't have to go rushing to another doctor for blood work. I know what's going on. Yeah. So you did all this traveling with your wife. I'm sure you took your kids were born during this period. Oh no, you waited.
Thank God. Yeah, no, we did not do the kid thing until, when we were in California for 13 years.
Okay.
And so once I moved out to study with that first mentor, and it was clear, like, okay, we're here and I'm opening up my clinic, then we had children during that time. So both of our kids were born in California, and then about 6 or 7 years ago we moved to Florida.
And are they good to their bodies?
The kids?
Yes.
Are they good to their bodies? Well,
yeah.
It's really interesting, honestly, how tuned in they are to food, like just their bodies and food, and honestly, and I'm telling you, it wasn't so much. Sure, there were conversations we had with them and that, but they just see my wife and I, and they model similar things, and so we're certainly not perfect any stretch of the imagination, but it is fun to see my kids in touch with themselves, and I think that's one of the biggest gifts that I wanted to give to my kids is making sure that, number one, they felt loved unconditionally and accepted. That's top of the list. But secondly, that they were free to be themselves authentically and get to know who they are and be connected to themselves and trust themselves. And like, if I could give anything to them, that's it, man. And so it's been our focus to do our best, and we mess it up more than we get it right, but we're learning. Is to just create that environment as best we can for them.
That's wonderful.
To see them. And they're young, so they're still moldable. My one kid.
Well, how can my listeners get through to you if they want more information? If they're not in Florida, how can we lead them to somebody maybe in their area, or is this something you can do remotely?
I do work with people remotely. I would say most of my clients are not in Florida, believe it or not. But I do have people around the country that I have worked with and trained, and so I do have a little bit of a network, and I'm working on building that network, because there's so many great people out there doing great things and align with a lot of the things that I've shared today. So always looking to connect with those people more and more. But my website is probably the best place, just MatthewLaBosco.com. But I also have an app. It's called Health to Vitality, and there's actually a 30-day vitality challenge on there, and it's all free content. and it kind of gives you a taste of this vitality paradigm. And obviously, I have my book too, Health to Vitality. But if you download the app, there's a lot of information on there. Like I said, we talked a lot about the physical body and movement and knee, back pain. So there's a lot of information on there. But I also said I did a deep dive with nutrition and systemic and also mindset. So that's all there. And there's all little topics that you can select, to check it out. And there's a 30-day vitality challenge. So it's like, hey, do these 10 things. Just do these 10 things every day for 30 days. And you'll upload the vitality, and there's a little test to test your vitality to see where you're at right now. So those are some great places to interact with some of these ideas. But if someone's looking to directly connect with me and work with me or take one of my courses, MatthewLaBosco.com is definitely the best place to go.
Well, we're going to put that all in the show notes. So there's no excuse when somebody says, I heard this guy on your podcast, and I don't remember what day it was. You know what? Give me a little bit of information and we'll go search it and send it out to you. You've been fantastic. I appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to share all this with my son because he is now in Texas and trying to identify with the state.
Which where is he in Texas?
He is in Fort Worth.
Okay, so Dallas, because I might have some people out there that might be able to help him, or at least give him a perspective from where I shared, my perspective, a similar perspective. So anyway, if you or him reaches out, Karen, I can poke around.
Perfect. Yeah, he works for the professional lacrosse team and the women's NBA. Okay. So,
oh, wow.
This is, from the day he was 2 or 3, he knew that sports is where he wanted to be. But when you have too many coaches who tell you, you know too much, you can't play on my team.
Thanks.
Yeah. So he's on the autism spectrum, high end. And when he played baseball, which is his first love, he wanted to play by major league rules because he would sit and watch the games. And in school, it's not that way. You have to swing at a ball. And if you don't swing at a ball, even if it's, a ball, you're out. And so he finally quit. He said, if I can't play by the real rules, I'm not going to play.
That is strange that they would make him do that.
But you've been wonderful. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks, Matthew. Have a great day.
You too.